Hello and welcome to the Starcross podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Rose. You may know me from my monthly tarot horoscopes in Glamour Magazine, my monthly subscriber newsletter and membership, Starcross on Substack, or from being the redheaded astrology girl that writes love letters to the zodiac signs, talks about deacons, and recently started talking about why your ex is a loser on TikTok. So I wanted to bring the Starcross podcast to my community and hopefully connect with other astrology obsessed people just like me who don't relate with a spiritual, bypassed, disconnected way of applying astrology to your real life. I myself am a Virgo with a Taurus rising. I also have 7 of my planetary placements in Scorpio, a fixed water sign. And my true belief in my path and purpose as an astrologer is to be somebody that can connect you more deeply to yourself, others, and the world around you using astrology, aka grounding down more and using these actionable steps more than ever. I don't believe in utilizing astrology as a way to disconnect you from yourself, put you in a box, disconnect you from other people, aka these compatibilities that are so surface level, like a Gemini and a Scorpio are never going to get along when, candidly, I've seen so many of them work out long term. I believe in using astrology as so much more than just your sun sign, and I'm hoping that as you continue to connect with me through the Starcross podcast, through any of my content on Instagram or TikTok, through the Starcross newsletter and membership, that you can really understand who you are meant to be, how to more fully express yourself, how to connect more deeply and intimately with other people and the world around you, and know that astrology isn't a box to put you in, but it's really a tool to help you fly and expand beyond who you've already been. So with that being said, I want the first episode to feel like a smooth landing. As somebody who travels relatively frequently, my worst fear is that as the plane is landing on the tarmac, that all of a sudden the many hours that I've just sat on the plane are going to go to shit, and this final moment is going to be the moment where everything, for lack of better terminology, just crashes and burns. So I would like for this episode to feel like the polar opposite. I would like for it to feel like the smoothest landing that you've ever experienced as a way to get to know me, my work, and hopefully the year ahead. This episode is going to be all about the astrology of 2025. So although this is coming out a tad bit late, I want you to understand that it's coming at the exact right time. As somebody who's based in LA, January was just not going to be it. Myself and the rest of my community, were dealing with truly one of the worst natural disasters and experiences that I've had in an almost decade of living out in LA. I know that we've had the big one that happened in Northridge, but the fires that just recently happened displaced not only myself, but tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. We lost over 24 people in the fire, so many animals, our land, and we're coming back into a state of regeneration. I don't think that I know personally anybody who predicted the fires and the disaster that were going to happen ahead of time and utilize that information in what I like to call an astrologically responsible way, which would have been sounding the alarms, telling everybody to get out and to prepare, right? But when people are talking about instances in the midst of them happening or afterwards with this kind of holier than thou approach, that to me is where I like to draw the line between the spiritually bypassed and the people that are actually using astrology for the greater good, the actionable steps, the human reality that we live in, because the reason that our souls have chosen to be in a human body is because there is some value and benefit to doing that. So I don't think our path and our purpose being here is to fully exist somewhere in the 5D. Like, there is a reason that our soul chose to be a body. And again, that is why I like to be an actionable astrologer. I say all of that just to be totally candid and real with you. January was not going to be it. We had just recently had Pluto shift into Aquarius, and we were starting the year off with this kind of recalibration between the outermost planet of secrets, of transformation, of death and rebirth, shifting out of its time in Capricorn since 2008. So we saw so much of Capricorn's expression on a societal level with the housing market crash right at 2008. We also had President Obama step in and reinvigorate us with this sense of hope and the desire to really grow. I think what Capricorn does well when we take away the overworking and the money hungry and the greedy and the capitalism that everybody likes to spout about is that Capricorn is cardinal energy. So our society was ruled by that energy from 2008 up until late 2024 to give us the chance and the opportunity to really climb our own mountain. As the mountain goat, the sea goat, Capricorn's energy really encourages us to move up our own ladder. However, we saw a lot of people take that message and get lost when they were climbing a societal ladder or comparing themselves to other people and trying to climb somebody else's ladder. In the spiritual community, there's a lot of conversation about someone stealing your timeline. As a Scorpio stellium, again, with 7 planetary placements in Scorpio, the minute that I clock that someone is trying to copy or imitate me and my work, I get all of the facts together. I call it out. It's not something that I allow into my personal space. Like, if I notice that someone starts to dye their hair the color red and have no training in astrology but call themselves an astrologer, or start to copy my content or copy the website copy that I have on my booking calendar or my website, I might not bring it up at the beginning of when I start to see all of the imitation, but once I have enough to make a case about it, I'm calling that person out. I'm blocking them on every platform, email, phone number. I'm blocking them from my friends' accounts. It's like, that's a done deal for me, because spiritual timeline hopping and trying to take somebody else's success rather than boost their friends and support their friends and then find their own authentic path, to me, that was what we saw so much of during Pluto in Capricorn. So as that ended at the end of 2024, and we had the chance and the opportunity to be like, was I climbing my own ladder or somebody else's ladder? I think it really rocked a lot of the world to wake up in 2025 with Pluto in Aquarius, which is an energy that now is blanketing over society and telling us eccentricism, authenticity, and innovation are the things that are going to be the most highly rewarded. So it's not the time for the old adage of influencer culture. If anything, this is when we start to see people who only have a few followers or only a few views pop off, go viral, get the brand deals, make the best content because they're being real. And that's what we're seeing society shift into, is that people want realness and authenticity. And I think that we as a society and in our individual experiences are going to be able to better see throughout 2025 when someone's being real or when someone's trying to copy, imitate, fake, and be something that they are actually not. So even if someone from 2008 to 2024 was able to make it by copying other people or being somebody that they weren't, that's not going to fly from here on out. And we're going to have Pluto and Aquarius influencing us on a societal level until 2043. retrograding back for a bit, coming back until 2044. But realistically, we just have to think we have this with us for 20 years. Be you. There is nothing that I can suggest more for the year ahead than for you to be you. And that also gets me into the themes of this year. So we have almost all of our outer planets shifting within the first half of this year. So we want to think about how that's really going to change everything for us. I want to make sure that I have all of the dates right. So if you're watching this, I apologize for me whipping my phone out. I know that we're probably watching and listening this to take a break from the phone. But we already have Jupiter, the planet of good luck, good fortune, expansion, optimism, having shifted into Gemini. At the beginning of 2025, we had a retrograde period that just ended on February 4th. So what that was giving us when we had that shift of Jupiter into Gemini late 2024, the retrograde period through the first month and a bit of 2025, and then now with us through the rest of the year, Jupiter in Gemini to me is the energy of expanded thought, expanded communication, expanded networks. The way that we understand interconnected oneness is really shifting for the better. So I want to remind us that the way that we communicate interpersonally, one person to another or in a group, is one thing, but the way that we communicate ourselves out to the rest of the world is really where this transit is going to show you its biggest blessings. I want you to utilize this time now as a way to expand your own thought process into how you can better connect and communicate with the society or the community that you're trying to find. So this is not keeping yourself in a small box, trying to be the person who you've always been for other people, people pleasing, worrying about living within the confines of rules and regulations before you allow yourself to be eccentric and ideological like Gemini really enjoys being. And then also popping the top off of you being socially anxious or awkward, which as somebody with generalized anxiety, I say that with a grain of salt. The one memory that comes to mind for me when I was in, this is a totally other life, I was in my capstone class for my small business development degree. So this was my associate's degree. And my teacher pulled me aside after class. We had to do a 40-minute presentation as our capstone. And he pulls me aside and he was like, Megan, you were red as a tomato. You were fidgeting with your hands. You were pulling at your shirt and your pants. And he's like, honestly, it was embarrassing to watch. And he goes, but I wouldn't have pulled you aside if I didn't believe in you. You need to learn performance skills. You need to learn how to get up and give a presentation if you want to make anything of yourself and your intelligence. So I'm channeling the energy of Frank and giving you that same advice because I've been working on my presentation skills for years to get to the point that I am now where I even feel slightly comfortable doing this. This is the first time that I've solo hosted a podcast. This is the first episode of the first project, right? Like I co-hosted When Stars Align. I've done other brand deals and video segments and all of that, but this is the first time that I've taken the leap as a solo host. So I don't want you to think that I'm coming at this from a hierarchical state. This is me trying to tell you exactly what Frank told me, which is get it together, learn the skill, make something of yourself. The greatest ideas I believe that exist in human minds are held back by thinking that you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, you're not smart enough, you're not successful enough, you're not whatever your excuse is enough. And I think Jupiter in Gemini is really the transit that wakes all of us up, like hits us like a hammer in the head and says, you can no longer be addicted to your limitations and think that you're going to be able to live the vibrant, fulfilling, connected life that is actually meant for you. So if I need to be that harsh Scorpio stellium that stings you with my stinger and tells you, wake up, post the content, be authentic, write the book, share your words, be a keynote presenter and speaker, just get out and share what it is that you believe in and who you really are. I think what we've seen happen in society when Jupiter was sitting in Taurus is that it was only the most stubborn or the most, like, Taurus has this ability to be really bullheaded and opinionated. And that was what we saw with what has truly divided our country, is that it was only the people who live in this ignorant bliss of thinking that because they're the loudest or the boldest or, talk over one another the most, that they're the ones that deserve the spotlight. And what Jupiter and Gemini is saying is, babe, get on your Zoom. This is the time for everybody to start chatting, start sharing more, start connecting more, leave individualism behind, because this is really the year for you to pop the top off and give everything that you've got to the world. That's the only way that the world is going to change for the better, is if the people that were playing it safe beforehand stop playing it safe and start getting in that fast-paced Gemini energy and share. We also have Neptune, another societal inflicting planet. It's an outer planet that rules over spirituality, the unseen aspects of life, our dreams, nostalgia, art, shifting into Aries on March 30th. And I've talked about this a bit before, but we really do see Neptune in the way that music is created, the way that art is expressed, the way that everyone is in their kind of bridge between the unseen aspects of reality and what we get to enjoy through our senses. So with Neptune having been in Pisces, we were in such a nostalgic state as a society. We had this kind of chapter of, over a decade of people living in the past. People were so obsessed during this time with the 90s and the early 2000s. I don't see Y2K dying out when Neptune is in Aries, but Charlie XCX's Brat album, to me, was really the bridge between Neptune and Pisces, which is the nostalgia, the deep cuts, the when I get to this club, I want to hear these club classics, and that destructive leader, pioneer energy that Neptune and Aries is really going to bring us. People are tired of contemporary art, contemporary design, particle board furniture, like thinking that the old way of doing things and this like hyper capitalistic late capitalism expression of our thoughts and ideas were enough, and really getting out of that deep throe of sensitivity and romanticism, and also Pluto and Capricorn's like, how do we cut the baseline and make sure that everything is the most effective and impacting. And now we have Pluto in Aquarius, Jupiter in Gemini, Neptune in Aries, and it's just screaming at people to get angry and think outside of the box and become the solution to the problems that we have seen pop up in society at large. And I cannot wait for this transit and for everyone to really show their ass in a way, like get bold and loud and do the most and be the most. And how can we get away from this hyper feminine, hypersensitive society where the right people felt like they were doing something wrong, into the right people realizing that nothing that they can do with pure intention is actually wrong, and being shameless and sharing the most incredible art and poetry and media and music and fashion that anyone has ever seen. I know that a lot of historians or history buffs have been looking to the past and thinking like Charlie XCX and Troye Sivan's Sweat Tour was like the roaring 20s before we hit the Great Depression. And I just look at society as this spiral where it's like, yes, if there's a big red barn on the ground and this cow gets swept up in a tornado and it's going up and around, but the tornado is starting to turn into a funnel and it gets bigger, it's like, yes, it still sees the red barn, but now there's this different perspective on both planes of existence where even though you're seeing the same thing, we have the opportunity of doing things differently because it's not exactly the same. So I really think that this is a powerful time for all of us to realize that we are free from repeating the past because we have this new plane of consciousness and existence that is giving us the opportunity and the breathing room to do something that we've never done before. So I'm really excited about Neptune and Aries. And again, that starts on March 30th. Then a few months later, on May 24th, we have Saturn shifting into Aries as well. So Saturn is the planet of rules, restrictions, challenges, lessons, and karma. So when we think about that planet going into the energy of Aries, and again, Aries, to me, when we talk about the house systems, Aries is the natural ruler of the first house of the human body, the way that you view yourself, how you're perceived, your physical appearance, it's your sense of self, your self-worth. But Aries energy is also cardinal fire energy. So when Saturn, it's still, as I'm recording this, in Pisces, and as somebody born in 94, I am actively in the throes of my Saturn return. So forgive me for any of the kind of restriction or constriction that has come over me and my work over the last couple of years. I have been going through the depths of hell, to put it really lightly. My Saturn in Pisces is in my 11th house of friends and hopes and dreams. So right at the top, first 2 weeks in, my Pisces grandfather dies. My roommate at the time tells me that she's moving out when I was in the worst depression that I've ever been in, and I cannot fault her for that at all. She's thriving where she moved. We are still incredibly great friends, somebody that I will love for life. All of it happened for a reason, but a kick in the gut at the time. Lost a terrible group of friends who tried to manipulate and utilize my asking for help as a point in time to tell me all of the things that I have ever done wrong as a friend, and how dare I ask for anything when I give nothing. Started their own podcast, went on a total tirade of talking about how I needed to be medicated and I needed my mental health checked, and all of this is just so Pisces coded to me, right? Like, Pisces is deep emotions, it's romance, it's the bleeding heart, it's making poetry out of the most painful things in our life. And to be candid with you, in retrospect, I feel so freed from all of those experiences that led me to the life that I have right now, where the relationship that I have to the deceased has changed so much and has actually become a huge part of the work that I do with other people. Thank you to my papa for that. Moved into an incredible space in my now favorite part of Los Angeles. Wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have that kind of swift kick of moving out and still kept my roommate as a friend. And just look in, sadness towards people who don't have the strong knit family or community or people who act as anything other than yes people to tell them that cruelty and unkindness is not cute and it's not the way that you should treat other people, and that is something that you are going to have to take to the end of your life with you, of treating other people in a way that doesn't reflect what you want to see in humanity. So I feel like I have grown so much in my Saturn return, and I say this to help other people who are entering into their Saturn return, people who have Saturn in Aries natally in their own birth chart, to tell you that this time between 2025 and 2028 might be hard. It might be challenging. Saturn's energy is coined the daddy of the zodiac for a reason. It's kind of like that father figure that puts down the rules and the restrictions and gives you a bedtime, and it tells you the lane that you have to stay in life in order to really succeed and see the best version of yourself be born. And if you're willing to listen to the confines that Saturn puts over your life with a level of surrender and gratitude for what it is teaching you, I think it's the most powerful portal that a person can walk through. And if you have Saturn in Aries in your birth chart, but were born a few decades back, this is going to be your second Saturn return. So funnily enough, I was born during my dad's first Saturn return. So we got to go through my first and his second together. And I truly see that relationship blossoming in a way that I didn't know it had the potential to, where vulnerability and closeness and open communication and heartfelt communication has been able to be born through both of us listening to what Saturn was asking of us. And I think if anybody else has that same dynamic, if you were born during a parent's Saturn return, which happened for a lot of us, being born sometime between our parents being 27 and a half and 30. So check on that. Ask your parents for their birth time if you're in communication with them or you're curious. And or if you have access to that too, right? It's not in everybody's experience to have access to that. So again, I'm very grateful that I do. But back on this, with Saturn in Aries, those that are going through their Saturn return are going to feel this the most heavily. It's going to feel the most personal and individual. And even if Saturn is not natal in your birth chart, everyone is going to experience this in a different way. And I say, look at the house that sign rules over to understand it. So Saturn in Aries, look at which house in your birth chart Aries rules to understand the themes of how this is going to impact you. An example, if you are an Aries rising, this will be in your first house. A lot of changes to the way that you perceive yourself and present yourself in the world, your self-worth shifting and changing, hopefully for the better, by you being more bold, stepping into leadership qualities and tendencies, roles that put you in a leader position. Aries is such an intense and driven and risk-taking energy when it is fully expressed. So look at which house is being implicated by Aries energy as Saturn shifts into Aries, because again, as we noted, Neptune will also be there. And it's going to be a really fascinating time just to see the ways that society gets a little more messy, a little more bratty, a little more bold and confident and brash, and takes bigger risks in order to gain higher rewards that benefit all people. A lot of the times people say the shadow aspect of Aries is that they come off as very selfish. Babe, they're the baby of the zodiac. Babies are inherently selfish because they are learning how to live. And it's not to say everybody with Aries placements, this is like their first time around. I hate when people put that implication like, oh, you're a young soul, you've never done this before. Or, I'm such an old soul, I'm so much more wise than everybody else. Spirituality was never meant to be a competition. And I think the least spiritually attuned people are the ones that try to make comparison and act like mean girls at a high school table. This is not a competition. My mentor, Ram Dass, before his passing, one of my favorite things that he had said was, our time here on earth is just an opportunity for us to connect with other people so we can walk each other home. We're all going to get to the end at some point. The way that we spend our time now is just a deeper opportunity for us to grow and expand in the eyes of love. So also watch the way that that comes through too, as these outer planets are in Aries. Like, selfishness and individualism is only going to get you so far. The real reason that we pioneer things is for the people behind us to benefit from the work that we've put in. So just keep that in mind. A few more of the major transits. I just want to make sure that we get to all of this. Jupiter, as we talked about, we start the year off in Gemini, but it swiftly shifts into Cancer on June 9th. The themes of this transit are going to be so heavily devoted to home and family. And what I want you to understand is that not being where you want to be with either of those arenas does not mean that it's not going to happen for you. So take time to understand that home and family are also a representation of vulnerability. Our ability to be vulnerable, to listen to our intuition, to connect with our emotions, to share our emotions, to honor our emotions when they arise is also going to be a huge theme to all of this. Give yourself the chance. I think embodiment practices are also going to be heavily rewarded during this time. So think somatic therapy, think just regular therapy, think trauma therapy, think journaling, meditation, connecting with a group of friends that you feel safe enough to really open up with. There's so much here about the more that you can connect and show your heart to other people, the better off that you will be during this time. Because again, Jupiter is the planet of good luck, good fortune, optimism, and expansion. So understand that your relationships of all kinds, your work, your sense of self, the opportunities that you're gifted in this life are going to benefit if you can align with the themes of Cancer. So I hope that those action steps help from June 9th through the end of the year, because it's going to be really beautiful to see what people are willing to open up about during this time, and then to see them be rewarded for that. I don't think society has seen that on a mass scale yet, especially with people being kind of demonized for showing their truth and their authenticity, showing where they fall on the spectrum of sexuality or gender normification or identification. It's this idea that feminism or femininity is not a bad thing, and that people of all genders can embrace their feminine sides and their aspects. Their artistic and creative expression, their emotions, and honoring them when they come up, and knowing emotions are allowed to be honored without being deemed as truth. So I'm excited, very excited for how everyone will feel under that transit, and hopefully seeing things from a political, global scale shifting in the right direction at that point. Things always get worse before they get better. Please don't forget that. The next big transit we have for 2025 is Uranus, an outer planet that deals with rebellion, sudden changes, shakeups, shifts that are unexpected, enters the sign of Gemini on July 7th. So if you have Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, or Virgo placements, you're going to feel this the most impactfully from July 7th onward. And it does make a retrograde during the later months of the year. So in late October and through November, we have this major retrograde period where everyone is going to be asked to slow down, to maybe stop taking so many big risks and changes, and to really reflect on what they've spent the first 11 months of the year doing. But from July 7th until November, we have Uranus in Gemini. The last time that we saw this as a society, the United States actually went through a civil war. And again, when I bring that analogy up of the cow in the tornado that can still see the red barn on the ground, like, this does not mean an exact replication of what has already happened during this transit, but I do see that we are going to see people fighting for what is right. And even as I'm recording this now, it's fresh off of Kendrick Lamar's halftime performance, which was art, and truly changed us as a society if you were able to understand it and listen to it. We had Grammys speeches from artists who were asking for workers to be fairly treated and compensated, people to protect trans lives, for Black women and people to stand up and accept yourselves and understand that even when society is telling you you're too much, you're too loud, you're too anything, that your self-worth is hinged on you understanding that you are exactly who you are meant to be. And I just see if this is happening on the big stages with performers who are using their platform and their stage to speak this out, it is a canary in the coal mine to the fact that millions of other people feel the same way. Which again, when we talked about Jupiter being in Gemini, I want to bring up something similar for Uranus in Gemini. That's to say, it's not just the people who were born into privilege or born into wealth or born into places of privilege that deserve to be heard. It's all people, and especially people who come from a pure intended place and have brilliant ideas and want to bring society back to interconnected oneness, where we realize we are simply 8 billion different iterations of the same energy. We don't need to fight. We don't need war. We don't need division. What we need is further acceptance of who everyone authentically is, especially starting with accepting our full selves, our shadow, our light, all of who we are, and sharing that authentic version of ourselves. I always go back to Shel Silverstein's poem of The Masks, and just the idea of this being, if you are a blue person, like if your authenticity is the color blue, but you're walking around with a green mask on looking for other blue people, imagine somebody else doing the same exact thing and you walk right by one another without ever knowing that you had just walked by who you were actually trying to find. So be you during this time. Make the sudden shakeups and the changes with your words and your ideas. And then the final kind of thing that I wanted us to focus on is the fact that we are now on the eclipse axis of Pisces as the north node of destiny and fate, and the south node of karma, comfort zones, and familiarity being Virgo. So this is a time where you're going to start to see that the easy response and the easy reaction to things is to be excessively and unnecessarily hard on yourself. That is that Virgo and south node energy. Perfectionism only gets you so far. And I use the analogy of, if you and your friend graduated from high school or college or whatever at the same time, and your friend immediately got a job that paid $80,000 a year, and you decided to go the route of further studying or taking a sabbatical and traveling the world or going off on your own and doing this entrepreneurial thing, the thing that's a little bit more risky, the thing that's outside of the box of perfection, the thing that's outside of the traditional makeup of how you should have been living your life, you might see your friend moving upward instantaneously a little bit more quickly than you, but you on this non-linear path and risk-taking have the opportunity of huge rewards and gains from stepping outside of the box of perfection and traditional routes. And I think during this time, because we had this shift happen in late 2024, and it's going to follow with us for an 18-month period. So all of the eclipses throughout the year, late March and April, are going to fall on this axis. So we see one in Aries, but then the other in Virgo. And then when we get into September, we have more eclipses that are now at that point, because we've had the full transition off of the Aries-Libra axis, fully into the Pisces-Virgo axis. Both of those eclipses in September are going to fall on Pisces and Virgo. So the themes of this year, because the eclipses are always in alignment with the North and South node, the moon, the sun. So what we get is this opportunity to say, how, where, and when can I shed my perfectionism in the pursuit of something more soul-fulfilling, more dreamy, more creative, more poetic, more romantic, to what I, at a soul level, actually want? Because again, Pisces bridges that gap between the unseen aspects of life and reality with the material, Pisces, Virgo. So we get this chance with Pisces in the role of the North Node of Destiny to say, what if I did listen to my heart? What if everyone started listening to their hearts and they came away from what they thought they should have been doing, or they should have been wearing, or they should have been behaving like? Virgo's energy has a tendency to should all over itself. And as a Virgo sun, I can laugh at myself enough and say, like, the amount of times that I've said to myself in a day, a week, a month, a year, oh, I should have done this. I should have woken up at this time. I should have gone at this time. I should have talked to this person a different way. And the reality of that is nobody gets to where they actually want to be by shoulding all over themselves. They just don't. They get to where they want to be by listening to their hearts. And I think that's what this Pisces North Node is really going to gift us, is the chance to see our perfectionism fall away, and what gets left is our heart's desires. When you wish upon a star, babe, like, this is going to be a really marvelous, incredible time for everybody to acknowledge who they have been when they were operating in perfectionism and go, I don't actually like how I feel when I'm doing that. And I actually don't like the path that my life is going in when I'm operating in that way, and instead give themselves the chance to listen fully to themselves and their hearts and allow a new life to be born out of connecting more deeply to your soul's path and purpose. So overall, the major themes of this year: transformation, inner reflection work, taking accountability, home and family. That does not mean blood related. That could be your chosen family. That's your sense of vulnerability. That's your emotional acceptance. New borders, communication, and societal norms around the world, and understanding that not everything needs to be taken so personally in order for personal things to shift and change. So let me know in the comments where some of the major themes of this year. We have Aries energy, Gemini energy, Cancer energy, Pisces energy, Virgo energy showing up. Let me know where those signs are in your chart, or what your rising sign is, so we can figure out where some of these planets are falling in your chart, how your 2025 has been starting. Let me know whatever comes up for you as you listen to this. And please understand that it is such a pleasure and a gift to be able to start this journey of the Starcross podcast with you. We have some really incredible guests coming on to chat more about your relationship to yourself, others, astrology, the world around you. It's going to be such a fun ride. And if you are a paid subscriber to the Starcross newsletter or the membership, remember that you get access to a free monthly astrology workshop to prepare every time that we have a seasonal shift. So the one that we just had on February 16th is still archived for you to better understand Pisces season. The next one that we go into is before March 20th, when we have Aries season starting up, and you will get one of these workshops every month to help you prepare for the month ahead. You also get uncut, blooper-filled, premium horoscope style podcasts from here on out, access to my booking calendar, so booking a one-on-one intuitive astrology and tarot reading. That is now a members-only exclusive for the Starcross community, and so much more. I am so grateful, like I said, to be doing this with you. Again, my name is Meghan Rose. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you have an incredible 2025 ahead, and I can't wait to see you next week. Thanks, guys.